Hello there, and welcome to episode 7 of Nothing Else Mattress, the music podcast that sets out to try and establish what we think are the 100 greatest albums ever made. To do that, we are getting some help from Rolling Stone magazine, and we are using their latest list of 100 to review 100 down to 1. And once we've done that, we'll see how many gaps we've got, and we'll have the pleasure of hopefully filling some of the gaps. We've reviewed 30 so far, and I think from that, 17 have been voted in. So we're already creating some opportunities to put some other great records on at some point. So we're going to do another 5 tonight. And as ever, to help us to do that, we've got some friends with us. So tonight we have Lisa. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Lisa. How you doing? We have John. Hi, John.
Hi there. Good evening.
With Cramps hat on. He's just subliminally pitching now for his records, early doors. And we have Stephen. How you doing, sir?
I'm very well, sir.
Good man, and you're and good to see you. You seem to be putting more Jam memorabilia behind us as well by the week here, so it's not all going unnoticed. All this subliminal, yeah. Well, we'll see what's on the next time. So we've got 5 to do tonight. George can't make it tonight, but it wouldn't surprise you to know he has given us his votes on each of the 5. So we'll bring George in virtually as well when we get round the table for those. So without further ado, the first one we are going to review tonight is an album of lullabies by NWA, which is straight out of Compton. So if you just give us a little minute, I'll just pull up the Rolling Stone because it's just popped out on me. So who wants to start with NWA straight out of Compton? And I will then give them the Rolling Stone take on it. So I'll give somebody a clean run at it first before I press the Rolling Stone. Who's brave enough? John,
Me.
Come on. Brilliant, mate. Come on then, and I'll see how this matches up. All yours.
All right. So you want me to kick off before
I
you
do.
get, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Go on. Interested.
Right. I think this is a sensational album. It is truly groundbreaking of its time. I did like rap music in the late 80s, particularly Public Enemy, who were the East Coast, New York-based, probably one of the initial bands that really stamped a mark. NWA came probably a year or two later on the West Coast, coming out of LA, coming out of Compton, obviously straight out of Compton being the album. And you look at who was in that band and what they've went on to do since. You've got Ice Cube, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, and a few others. Really the influence cannot be understated as to what an impact they've had. In many ways, culturally, but also socially and politically. There's a lot of, they talk about and sing about their own experiences and what's going on in their communities. They talk about gangster rap and all that kind of stuff. But they're talking about, the experiences, negative experiences that they've faced through racism, policing, etc., etc. The first 3 songs in the album just hit you like a train. Straight out of Compton, fuck the police, gangster, lyrically just, really, really interesting, and, but also the beats behind it, the music, can't understate that as well. It just merged love, fantastically, and lots of samples, as you would expect from rap music, which intertwine with, their own tunes as well.
So you were a fan of rap generally, John?
Yeah,
I
was. Yeah,
right.
But weirdly, I didn't listen to this album at the time. I don't know why. I really picked up on Public Enemy.
Yep.
And the Beastie Boys. So it's probably more of a New York thing for me. And I, sort of steered away from NWA for I don't don't know why, but I quite a broad musical taste then, as I still do. Interestingly, you read about this album. The FBI wrote to them, particularly around, fuck the police. And the letter that the band received from the FBI is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an exhibit.
Yeah.
So, really interesting. And it was also, I think, the very first, or one of the very first albums in America that had the parental advisory stickers.
Yeah.
And that was a real campaign politically to silence bands and artists. And I always remember the furore around one of the other bands, which was the Dead Kennedys, an American punk band at the time, which I'm slightly going off on their album Frankenstein, was it? Around one of the inserts in it, and politically, people were railing against bands like the Dead Kennedys, NWA, about having a voice. They wanted to shut that voice down, but no, you have to listen to us, and boy, did they do that. I think initially, as I say, they were a bit like a steam train, and then ultimately the band imploded. After a reasonably short time, I think they were really on the go for about 3 or 4 years.
So this was their debut album, and I think I'm right saying that I think that this lineup only made one album together. I think Ice-T left before
that's right.
The Nigger for Life album was done, so it's kind of iconic for that reason as well. It's kind of one moment in time, really.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's right. And I think what played out thereafter was a lot. You tend to find in that scene a lot of feuds going on between the fallout, and they start writing songs about each other and having a go and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, they came back together for a period. Obviously, like Eazy died, early on, and there's a great documentary. It's not a documentary; it's a film based on the band as well, which is really fantastic. But I think there's just so many great songs in this. I think I talk about the first 3 songs in it, but there's others as well, such as Parental Discretion is Advised, and if you actually listen to the music on it, it's piano led but very funk based, and I think a lot of people would probably listen to those first 2 or 3 songs and go, Christ almighty, it's quite in your face and all that. But there's lots of subtleties going on in this record as well. So, it's not just about the in your face stuff that some people probably can't see past. But I love it. I think it's a great album. It's also the first rap album to get a 5-star review in Rolling Stone.
It was indeed, yeah. And the first one to sell 1 million copies, I think, in America as well.
And of course, all those samples as well that are going on, that you're looking at their influences there. You get James Brown, Funkadelic, and a band from Scotland, of course, Average White Band are in there as well, being sampled. So I think it's a real solid album. There are a couple of dips in it. It's not all 5 stars for me. There are a couple of songs that I don't think really hit the mark, but I think overall it is a solid album, and it's quite revolutionary. So for me, it's one I would definitely vote in.
And at that 60-minute mark, I know we've spoke about this before, John. Is it just getting right to that point? I think of just being too much.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, there's probably a couple of songs you could shave off it, but I think 12, 13 songs in this one lasts an hour. I can handle that quite fine. So I think it's a strong contender for me.
Cool. That's probably better than the Rolling Stone review that I've read out there. So I'll just I'll play back what Rolling Stone said. So NWA's debut brought West Coast gangster rap to Middle America and changed hip hop forever. It was the launching pad for the careers of Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and Dr. Dre. Back then, we was calling it reality rap. Ice Cube told Rolling Stone years later. Gangster rap is the name that the media coined. Ice Cube's Rage and Dr. Dre's Police Siren and Street Beats combined for a truly fearsome sound on Express Yourself and Straight Outta Compton, but it was the protest track Fuck the Police that earned the crew its biggest honour, a threatening letter from the FBI, as you explained there. So yeah, I think you've pretty much hit all the points. That kind of revolutionary part going on the West Coast, of course, and you know, and it was all kind of coming out of New York at the time, wasn't it? Really, and all of a sudden it's kind of changed. So, and also didn't have any radio play because of the profanities in the records. They couldn't. You can imagine America, you couldn't be heard anywhere. MTV wouldn't play them, so there was a whole bunch of stuff going on with it. So. Yeah, it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Okay, thanks, John. Lisa, what's your take, mate? I was going to shut this blind.
I was going to say you've gone all stripy.
I have, yeah, like the white stripes. There we go. That's better. So, Lisa, what do you think?
I totally agree with John. So there's no point in me going over everything that he said. I'll just be brief. So. My God, where would you start with this? I mean, I love the album, don't get me wrong, absolutely love it. Introduced it by my teenage boys, and hearing them singing that along was slightly disturbing for me to start with. But, you know, listening to the record, trusting their intelligence that this is maybe not the views that they should be taking. I kind of learned to love it, but I mean, let's not beat about the bush. It hits you with a bang. It's debauched, it's misogynistic, it's almost nihilistic. They don't offer, doesn't seem like they offer any hope for any of the problems, you know, and it's horrifying. And they offer no apology for that, but as much as it's horrifying, it's also hilarious.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think you have to sort of take yourself beyond the, you know, sort of women are only good for sucking dick, and you know, then when they stop you kill them, and you know, cops should be murdered. It's once you get past all that, it is an absolutely brilliant record, and I love it.
Okay, I was going to ask you whether you thought the sort of misogynistic side of it was sort of dated or had dated at all over the years, or is it just taken in the context it's written, do you think? Or
I think it's, you know, they're sort of, their minds are in the ghetto, you know, and that's just the way they were seeing things. I think it's pretty dated, but who knows? Yeah,
true. And I think from their side, they managed to say they only really made one album together properly, and as John said, we got sort of recognition in the trade press, which was unheard of at the time, on 5-star reviews, and sold a whole bunch of records as well. And you wonder how they managed to get that amount of power through, in effect, one album. I was laughing, I was having a look at their sort of discography and stuff. They've done 2 records, but they've actually got 7 compilations out of having 2 albums. Because I think the people have cut up so much of what they've done into, you know, other bite-sized chunks to kind of reflect back on, as well as some of the sampling and stuff that John mentioned as well. So I was quite surprised by how much is in there, other than the obvious stuff that, you know, you do pick up quite quickly, and then you obviously, as John says, you're going a bit deeper, and there's a bit more in there. But it is very in your face, and I just wondered culturally whether we felt there was too much of that, or are we happy with it?
Well, obviously I wouldn't say I was happy with it, and it is a cultural thing. But you said to me, you know, or you asked me, is it dated? And I said, yes, it is. But, you know, I see misogyny all around me on the rise again, you know, women's rights, you know, being pushed to the boundaries. So I don't know how dated it actually is.
Okay, really interesting. Okay, Stephen, what's your take, mate?
First up, fair play to John for the best review I've heard yet.
Yeah, it was cracking. He's good at this, isn't he? Yeah.
Oh, aye.
Yep, fair play. You stole my thunder immediately when you said the word groundbreaking. I've got it written down.
Listen, you can say it again, and kudos to you as well for saying that. It's fine.
But rap was never greatly my scene, but this one hit me between the eyes like a bullet. I'd never heard anything like this. I'd heard the odd crappy poppy, top of the box rap stuff. But this, wow.
Bullets quite a lot.
Yeah, I thought, I thought,
Yeah.
this is going to sound bizarre. I think there's a little tiny punky element about it. You know, just kicking out, kicking back.
Yeah.
You know, niggas with attitude. That's straight in your face immediately. Niggas with attitude. The Sex Pistols, the Clash, right? They're all sort of violent. You know.
Yeah.
I think there's a tiny little punk element to it, and I personally love it. And it's not really my scene, but this is phenomenal in my opinion, and it changed my opinion big time.
And is
about
the
all
kind
this
of
stuff.
record, would you go out and buy this, Stephen?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Even now, I probably would. I mean, I've heard it. I have heard it, but I don't have it, you know, filed away or anything. But I mean, I wouldn't play it out cutting the grass or anything, or you know, walking the dog. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having it around because it's sort of grounding, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think it as Lisa mentions misogyny and what have you. I think it reminds us that they don't go down a dark path anymore.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I'm all for it being in.
Okay. Okay. I would kind of agree with all of that. So I kind of wee bit of summary context on this. It cost about 12 grand to record the record. So it was very much a kind of car boot recording almost, because obviously they were doing a lot of stuff on the hoof at the time. And Dr. Dre managed to get them some studio time and knock it out as they've done. And I guess the flip side of that is that Dr. Dre then subsequently came to dislike the record, and I don't think it was the record they disliked. I think it was more the sound of it, because obviously he became a very sort of fated producer and what have you. So I think he looks back on it saying, I actually don't like the sound of the record now. But I think he accepts the sort of power that came with that. And in some ways it probably works almost as I don't know, it's about like the first Clash album or something.
Yeah.
It sounds the way it sounds, right? Because that's the way the Clash were at the time. And you know, that's not a bad thing. I don't think you'd want NWA to be too slick. I don't think it wouldn't work for them. So reviews were really mixed at the time. I think there was some fantastic reviews for them, but it was a little bit overpowering, I think, even for the sort of reviewers, and there was quite a lot of negativity, particularly in the UK, I might add. A lot of fairly well sort of versed NME guys and stuff over here gave it a bit of a hard time. Thought it was too much in your face and too much of the do it by your own rules type stuff. And you know, I guess again, some of them have reviewed that over time. Lots of references to Public Enemy, John, as you mentioned, which is quite interesting. Public Enemy they will come up on the list a little bit further down the line, so which should be good as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think as well with this, you know, we talk about people in the NME and the UK press reviewing it, right? That's not their reality. You know, these guys are talking about their reality, but ghetto life. And a couple of years later, you know, the Rodney King situation kicked off. That's what they're singing about here.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they're singing about. That was going on at the time. Rodney King's a catalyst for more a broader thing, right? But this is what they were, you know, I don't know what that's like. I don't want to know what that's like, but I get it because you know, you can read about it and you can listen to it, but to live that, I'm never going to know what that's like.
To hear it though, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. See, you want to hear someone else's point of view. What's their life experience? That's what they're singing about. No, this isn't make believe or something. This is real. This is, you know, what they're singing about is their life and the life round about them in their community.
Yeah.
So,
and also no one had really been doing that on the West Coast, certainly not to that level.
Mm-hmm. No.
So you can imagine the impact it had around their own neighbourhoods, and then subsequently through the media and the music press and stuff like that. I just picked up a little comment here from a Rolling Stone writer actually at the time. So he called the album a bombastic, cacophonous car ride through Los Angeles' burnt out and ignorant hoods. And what he was saying was that if you could have painted a picture of what it was like at the time in that part of the world that they were in Compton and places like that. That's what the record does. It sort of paints a picture with music and sound and words. So I think you're right, John. There was a cultural disconnect between America and the UK with it. So
I'm pretty sure that one of my boys actually persuaded me by saying, "Mum, it's educational," and you know,
everything's educational, isn't it, in its own way? You know, we hopefully we're educated. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. I don't think anything else to add. My only other PS on that was, what do we have? Twitter, we're 68% yes for this. So, yep, feeling a bit of love on Twitter from the guys. And the film that you mentioned, John, that Straight Outta Compton kind of biopic that they done. The person who plays Ice Cube in it is actually Ice Cube's son.
Wow.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. So you talk about, you know, trying to sort of keep it real and try and reflect what was going on at the time. I don't think you can do much more really than get your son to play you. So yeah, pretty cool guys, I think. So let's go around the room. I'll start with George actually. George was an absolute yes on this. Yep, George loved it. So we'll get a yes from George. Stephen, what's your take, mate?
Oh yes, hell yes.
Oh yes. Lisa?
It's a definite yes.
It's a definite yes. I always feel like, I don't know, is it the X Factor now? I don't know what it is now. Britain's Got Talent, is it?
Have I got somebody in my chair now?
John?
Hell yes.
Hell yes. Oh, happy days. Well, of course, I'm a yes as well. So I think that's 5 yeses, and we've not had too many of those. So that's a big tick for NW. Maybe one of these ones when we come to reappraise the list that maybe might nudge up a little bit. 70 feels not low, but maybe needs a wee bit more recognition as you put it into the sort of latter stages of the best albums. But for the moment, it's on the list, which is fantastic. So 1 down, that's great. Number 69 on the Rolling Stone list, released in 1995, was Alanis Morrisette, Jagged Little Pill. So I'll give you the Rolling Stone summary. Alanis Morrisette was 21 when Jagged Little Pill was released, but she was a showbiz veteran at that point. She'd been on a Nickelodeon TV show and had made 2 flimsy dance pop albums, and she knew what kind of music she wanted to make. I found that the more truthful and vulnerable I was, the more empowering it was for me, she said. Songs like Ironic, Head Over Feet and Hand in My Pocket were calm, even philosophical, but it was You Oughta Know, a full-throated riposte to a callous ex that made her reputation, partly because there was no one like her. So that's the Rolling Stones summary of Alanis Morrisette, Jagged Little Pill. Lisa, do you want to take us on this one?
Why did I know you were going to start with me?
Because it feels right, I think.
It's misogynistic.
because I think I know what you think on it, because you've...
Well, you know, you couldn't have discussed the last album without mentioning the misogyny, you know, the violence, you know, you need to mention it, but, you know, still voted it in. It wasn't...
You did.
Only a factor. So this is infamously every woman's scorned go-to angry record, play it up loud, you know, but there's a hell of a lot more to this record than just that. And obviously, as you said, that You Oughta Know is what she became really famous for. It's probably what made it. But I think it's a brilliant album, and what makes it so amazing is the age she was when she wrote it. You know, she was about 19.
Yeah, I think about 21 when it came out, but yeah, 1920 when she wrote it, yeah.
But, for instance, You Oughta Know, I think, was written about an experience, a relationship she had with an older guy when she was about 17, 18. You know, so the way that she expresses these feelings in this record, I think, is quite incredible for her age. I love her voice. She's got a brilliant voice. First song, All I Really Want. Her voice is really striking. I think it's really interesting the way she really shows the versatility of her voice when there's almost like there's an interplay between her and the guitar. You know, they almost sound similar, like they're sort of intertwining. I don't know, but maybe that's just me.
So she co-wrote the album with a guy called Glenn Ballard, who had a fairly strong track record through doing some other stuff with Michael Jackson and others that will maybe mention. But you're right. I think he was very keen on that kind of musicality to bring sort of her passion, if that's the right word, her passion in the lyrics that she had and stuff. And he very much brought the music to kind of join with that, to give it that feel, because it does feel quite joined up, doesn't it?
There is a lot of passion there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, it's seen as this just this angry woman, but as I said before, there's so much more than that, because yes, she is angry, but she's raw with grief, and it really comes over in her voice. That I'm talking about. You ought to know, obviously. Yeah. She's angry, yet her voice is almost shaking. It's the anger's hiding her vulnerability. She's a young person. She's obviously been really hurt. But also what's maybe more unusual about it is that, this isn't a girl, singing about crying and her tears on her pillow and that kind of thing. She's really wanting to sort of express just how hurt she is, how devastated she is. She really goes for it. She's also showing that, women are just as much sexual beings as men. She talks about, did she go down on you in the theatre? She said, is she perverted like me? Any other quotes? Can't think. But it's quite unusual for a woman to be quite so graphic about it, and I think that's a really good thing for women. So, it's kind of opposite from the last record we were listening to.
Very interesting that
makes it really. I think it's really strong. There's vulnerability there, but I think that was quite brave of her at that age, and a really positive thing to do. That we don't just lie down and go, do you know what, I'm just going to greet and let you guys walk all over us. But no, we break up, we're hurt. We might miss the sex as well. Hey ho, it's no surprise.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, actually, you mentioned that she's number 69 in the.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, we'll give you that one.
On that because I'm a woman with feelings.
Yeah, we'll give you that one. So it was her third studio album. She was actually a very, very big star in Canada. Both of her first two records were million sellers in Canada. And she was a proper teenage pop sensation, like Tiffany and sort of people like that. And I think when she had those relationships, that then obviously then was one of the catalysts to make her change and do something a bit more kind of adult and a bit more mature. But I think it's interesting, you think about the NWA thing we just mentioned there in all of Lisa's comments. This was absolutely embraced by MTV, radio stations, media, press, and some of it is pretty challenging. Some of her videos are quite challenging as well. So it's interesting how NWA literally couldn't get anywhere with it. And then you're not that far down. I think it's like a 7-year gap between the albums, and this thing's everywhere.
They didn't play their some of the work.
No, I get that, but
they weren't played. It wasn't that embraced as much as you'd like to think it would be.
No, get that.
I think though as well, Brian, that when the album was recorded, they actually had quite low initial expectations for it because of what she'd done before and the sea change that she was now doing. And I think it was KROQ or KROX radio station picked up on, I think it was You Ought to Know, but if that was the first single, and it just got airplay and it just snowballed. Snowballed really quickly, and it can just show the power that one radio station, might have, that they'll pick up on something and run with it, and then suddenly, it becomes a bit of a phenomenon, which it ultimately did.
It's a pure divorce. I mean, it's a belter.
Oh, it is a belter.
It is a belter.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I know we talk a bit about albums being successful don't necessarily make them great, and vice versa, of course. But I mean, this one was so successful. So she had 6 singles that were all, I think they were all top 10 Billboard America. It was number 1 in 13 countries, the album. It sold 33 million copies. It won 5 Grammys. It was number 1 in America for 12 weeks. which again is almost unheard of. And it was actually number one in the UK off and on for a couple of hundred weeks, because it came back again as the singles kept coming back out again. So I think, you know, when you're putting things into context, and that's without any streams and stuff, because George would give us a hard time about talking about streams, but whatever she was trying to do, the message she was getting across landed big time here. You know, the sort of paying public went and bought into it. So so the summary for you, Lisa, would be what? Good album, great album? What's your take on it?
I think it's a great album.
Great album.
A great album.
Okay. Excellent.
And I liked it at the time as well.
Yeah, me too.
But I hadn't listened to it for years.
Me too.
And I hadn't revisited at all till now. And I've been loving listening to it.
Yeah, me too, mate. Thank you. Stephen, John, who's jumping?
Stephen's putting his glasses on, so I'll defer to him.
Stephen.
No, listen, I'm one of the 33 million that bought this back in the day.
Yeah, me too.
And to this day, I still play it. And I think, I proper love this. I always have. Do you know what I like? The rage in it. I don't know if it's just me, but I can feel an underlying rage roaring through this. And maybe that's what got the job of God in Dogma. Remember that?
I do, yeah. I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember it, yeah. Yeah.
So you're doing something right if you get to play God.
Yeah. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I have, yeah. Several times. Great film.
Very good. Thanks for learning.
You know, but the thing is as well, I was also slightly frightened of her. You know, I would not have lifted her pint.
So this girl's got attitude, right? So
yeah.
just sort of, you know, interjecting there with what Stephen's saying, you know, when all this happened, and she obviously became a big star and stuff like that, but she didn't step away from anything that she felt was sort of worth calling out on. So I don't know if you remember, but she hosted the Juno Awards in Canada, is that right? She hosted those in Canada after she had been banned in America from one of her videos, because she was dressed in a kind of nude bodysuit for it, and she came on and hosted the awards in Canada in a nude bodysuit. And if you were in the audience at the time, you literally would have had no idea that she had something on. It just looks as if she's walked on the stage absolutely stark naked. And you know, she was very happy making statements that she felt were relative to what the music business was doing or not doing, rather than just sort of coasting a bit after selling all those records, which I guess might have been easier for her to do at the time. Sorry, Steve, I just thought that was relevant to that kind of angry thing. I think she definitely has attitude.
Yeah. It wasn't like open fury. I mean, it wasn't like, again, the pistols, but it was a sort of underlying rumbling rage bubbling away.
Yeah.
You know, but it just came out beautifully. You know, I still to this day think it's one of the best albums I've got.
And when you revisited it, did you still think that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's what Lisa was saying there, that it doesn't feel as if it's sort of, you know, dated or...
No, it's not aged.
No.
Well, potentially probably has, but production values and what have you. But from a content point of view, I don't think it's aged.
I think he's quite a clever cookie, this Glenn Ballard. I know he was a bit of a kind of careerist producer, engineer, but, you know, he was on, I think, all the Michael Jackson albums that made it. Thriller, Bad and Dangerous, he was an engineer on all of those. So, you know, there was obviously something in there. He's got a bit of gold dust somewhere, and at the very least, if you're learning from stuff like that with Quincy Jones and obviously Jackson himself, you're going to learn some stuff as you come out of that, aren't you? You know, so
I think he's really picked up on her emotional intelligence and really brought it out through her voice. You know, it's as Stephen said, there's a lot of rage there, but there's also a lot of tenderness and a lot of vulnerability as well. You know, she talks about other relationships, you know, maybe sort of parent-child, although I think that was more of a statement about how society looks at you. I mean, she said that I think when she sang Perfect live once, I think she said, this is to all you Catholic girls out there, because she was she'd been to a girls' Catholic school herself, and and she felt that, you know, that you had to be a certain way to be good. So it wasn't so much a mother telling a daughter or a son, you know, we'll love you any way you are as long as you're perfect. I think it was a more general statement. Anyway, sorry, I digress. I'm good at that.
Brian, you're on mute.
But apologies, John. Dog was barking there. So Stephen and Lisa pretty positive there, I think. John, what's your take, mate?
Well, I think Lisa and Stephen have really summed this up really, really well. I think, you know, there was a bit of seismic change going on with Alanis Morrisette. You know, I read about her past before that. It was a bit dancey pop and offensive, and you know, she's made this connection with Glenn Ballard, and I think there was instant synergy there that has allowed her to express her, you know, what she was really want to get out. I would have got Marion on to talk about this, but with Michaela being here, that's not happened.
What would Marion have said about it?
Well, she's given me some thoughts on it. She was a bit worried because she's listen, I've not listened to it for a number of years, and I don't know if it's aged well. But she said, having listened to it, she went, it has aged well, like me. That those last two words she may or may not have said, so you can think about that. But I think lyrically, it's just fucking hell. It's off the scale. Because I admit, like Marion, this was out before I met Marion. She went, she's a bit, I'm not sure, because she was like, I'm not sure if I want to listen to this because bring back certain memories from a distant relationship. But she loved it, and she said you need to listen to the lyrics, especially, which I've done. And fucking hell, there's so much going on. I mean, the first song in it, All I Really Want, is just such a powerful opener. It's beefy. It hits you, right there. As I think for any album, you want a strong opening, right? Something that's going to grab your attention, and that really does. The guitar, especially the harmonica, but her voice, and then the lyrics. I think there's mentioned a couple of lyrics in various songs, and I was looking at some of the lyrics, and generally not something I always pick up on. I tend more to get into the hooks of records, but when a lyric, gets me, I think, oh, bloody hell, that's brilliant. And and clearly sometimes you need to get it with the context of the song. But why are you so petrified of silence? I just think that's such a great line. Yeah. Then you're on to You Ought to Know. You've got a couple of guys for the Red Hot Chili Peppers on bass and guitar. Brilliant. And I think when I listen to it, I get a sense of just someone that is really wanting to express herself and really rail against a male-dominated music industry. Really powerful. I get bits of Sinead O'Connor coming through, Shakespeare's sister. As well, that attitude.
Pink
as well.
Lana Del Rey.
Absolutely. I mean, You Ought to Know. I believe that might have been the first single. I'm not sure the lyric "Are you thinking of me when you fuck her" was on the radio version.
No, it wasn't.
You're like, gee, my God. They're so caustic and just really hard on the sleeve stuff. She sings songs about religion and how you should act as a female. This is the way you should act, and if you're not a virgin by the time you're going into your 20s, you're gonna go to hell. I mean, fuck off. But she's singing about that, and she's singing about the sleaze of the music industry, right?
Yeah.
You know, what was the lyric? I can't recall the lyric, but you know, you think about that, and I mean, it's so true. And but it's still going on, right? You look at Harvey Weinstein, right? Entertainment industry, it's still going on. You come and sleep with me, and I'll put you in a film. I'll give you a record deal, and you know, she's had the, excuse the expression, the balls to put this down and go, this is what it means to be a young female artist, and this is what I'm going to sing about. You know, it's grungy, it's rocky, it's Americana or Canada, or, you know, for want of a better phrase. But you know, I just think it's really, really good. And you were talking earlier about how it did well in so many charts and all that kind of stuff across the world. Only got to number 10 in Hungary. The Hungarians, they don't have a clue.
Yeah, very old-fashioned culture in Hungary, of course.
Yeah,
you know,
indeed.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly, yeah. Thanks, Stephen.
So
for all our Hungarian fans, yeah.
I must admit, when I listened to it, I was surprised about how many songs actually were familiar to me.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's got 13 tracks if you include the kind of hidden track. There's 12 tracks on it. I mean, when I listened to it again, first 4 and last 4, I've absolutely marked it down as being outstanding. You know, and I mean outstanding. I mean, it's a start and an end to an album that's as good as you'll hear in any sort of pop rock album. I think there's a wee bit in the middle. I think you know, when you get 12 songs on anything, as we talk about, it's really hard to kind of keep nailing that. So I think it just dips a little bit in the middle, but the start and the end's outstanding. And for the age that she was at, and the context that she was sort of writing some of the stuff in, what she's produced, I think it probably did deserve the kind of sales and recognition, and maybe they don't always deserve that, but this one for me absolutely did. It was outstanding. I think Rolling Stone says she was like a sort of 90s version of Carole King. And what I think they meant by that was not, it's obviously a bit sort of angrier if you want, but if you remember the Carole King story, that she kind of couldn't catch a break at all, and she ended up just doing it herself, and next thing you know, she's sort of changed music, hasn't she, for the better. So I think there's a bit of that in Alanis Morrisette for all these people that came through after her, and you know, used that to kind of to sort of kick on and do their own stuff. There's a couple of other things I picked up on, which was quite interesting. So she world toured, obviously when she sold this, she world toured. So her support act for the world tour was, John, you know this, wouldn't you?
I do, yeah. And I saw this band supporting, it was either Fine Young Cannibals or James at the Barrowland, and the lead singer took a hissy fit when someone flicked a cigarette at him and it hit him bang in the forehead, which was hilarious. But I won't spoil your thunder. Yeah,
it was Radiohead. So Radiohead supported Alanis Morrisette, which in about 96-ish, you know, Radiohead were getting pretty tasty. It was after the Bends and just before OK Computer. So they weren't an up and coming band, you know. They were sort of starting to find their chops, and they were more than happy to play with her. There's a cracking MTV Unplugged show that she did, and there's obviously a live record of it kicking about somewhere. And again, if you get the time to listen to it, it's outstanding, because obviously when you strip these things down, the songs don't always stand up to that kind of format. But it's great. She even makes a Police song sound really good, which I don't mind the Police, but you know, they come and go. She does a cover of King of Pain on it, which is brilliant. I think she's just a clever cookie. I think she's very, very, very talented, and also still doing what she wants to do. I think she's stopped being as sort of commercially recognised, but when she puts records out, they're still, you know, pretty important. And she's still got a voice as well, which is good. Twitter were 60% no on this one. It was interesting. There's a couple of comments, and at Carol Jungle Boy, who's John, who's great. John comes on and chats about a few things with us. So he says he quite liked it. His view was that he didn't think it would be, say, up there with Lana Del Rey or Patti Smith, who he was using as maybe a bit of a sort of benchmark, which I thought was fair. But the Patti Smith album is on the list, further up the list. Lana Del Rey isn't, but when I actually had a wee look, the Norman fucking Rockwell record is the highest ranked new record on the list. So I think it was just out at the time, 2020. So I think, again, if no doubt when these lists get redone, I think the Lana Del Rey's of the world will probably end up, coming on lists a bit higher up, a bit like the Alanis Morissette's done, which is good. And she also did a great cover of To All the Boys I've Loved Before, the old Willie Nelson song. But she flipped to the genre on, and it's great. So listen, got to love Willie Nelson. So I'm absolutely in. I think it's a great album. It's actually quite a bit of a pleasure to listen to it again. So which was lovely. Are we all in on that one? Or is there any dissenters?
No, I'm in.
Are we all hell yes? Yeah.
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 And so was John. John was a hell yes too. So we are 2 for 2. That's interesting. Right.
Well, I don't agree with you that it dipped in the middle, because I don't think as a listener my heart could take that sort of intensity the whole time. I quite enjoyed that little lull,
You don't listen to a word I say, Lisa. I probably fell asleep or something during the middle, so just my age. Okay, so talking about important female singer-songwriters, number 68 on the list is Kate Bush with The Hounds of Love. So Rolling Stone said, Kate Bush was an avant-garde auteur as well as a beloved English pop star. Her new wave masterpiece, Sounds of Love, is one of the greatest examples of an artist enjoying top 40 success while luxuriating in her own eccentricities. Playing futurist Fairlight CMI synthesizers and singing in an ecstatic operatic chirp, she muses about Freudian psychology, career challenges, love and family, dreaming sheep, and waking witches. Side 1 has hits like Running Up That Hill and Cloudbursting. Side 2 was an epic story suite moving from goth terror to sci-fi abstraction to dark rustic revelry. It's no wonder Bjork, Florence Welch and others are just a few of the artists who have been swept up in Bush's sensual world. 68, Kate Bush, Hounds of Love, released in September 1985. Who wants to talk about Hounds of Love? Stephen, what's your take on this, mate?
I'm in a really positive mood tonight. I've got to stop it immediately.
Not like you.
Again, it's one of those albums that hit me right between the eyes. Who's the better female British vocalist, Kate Bush or Annie Lennox?
Kate Bush.
Is
that correct? Is it a vote? Yeah.
I'm just putting out there that she's got to be the top 2.
Yeah. In
my opinion, we could maybe slot Dusty Springfield in there in the bronze medal position, but I think she's wonderful. I know she's bonkers.
I was going to say like the most unique vocalist.
Yeah, we'll stick with bonkers.
Yeah.
Okay,
so you're a Kate Bush fan, right? What about the actual?
Yes,
what about the album itself? You're a fan of the album?
We've talked about this before in the car. I remember you telling me about the duet she did with Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
And she rocked up and without knowing it, did it in a single tape.
Yeah, Don't Give Up.
Don't Give Up. Yeah. A single take without knowing the song. That sums it up for me.
What's that, Lisa?
I love that song.
Yeah, me too.
She rocked up to his place and just nailed it.
I think Gabriel had spent 2 months or something working on it, as he would do, because he's a perfectionist, and she came in and he gave her the lyrics and played the backing track to her, and she sang it and had a cup of tea and left. And that was what went on the record. So yeah, she's a clever cookie. And what about this album, Stephen?
I love the same synthesizer.
What's that? Sorry.
Not sure I love of the same synthesizer.
Yeah, synthesizer. Yeah, she might.
Fairlight.
Fairlight.
I think it's a wonderful album. I mean, that's not one I play every 3 or 4 months, but every now and again I'll dip back in and still love it as much. This is another one of those timeless ones, in my opinion. And
what about the difference between side 1 and side 2? Because there's a marked difference between the two. It's a classic LP, you flip it over and, it's different, isn't it? It's not a continuation of what side 1 was.
Oh, no, because she's too eclectic for that. Right. She's too advanced, too clever for that. She's always going to mix it up. She's going to change her persona or mood, the whole lot. So it makes sense that she mixes it up.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I like it so much.
Well, it was her 5th studio album, and she was always pretty popular, but I think since her debut, which obviously was huge, she'd kind of done stuff and she'd had hits and stuff, but she hadn't had any sort of mass commercial success. What was that? That was 7 or 8 years, I'd say, since Wuthering Heights. So, you know, quite important, I guess, for her in her own way to not only make great music, but to get, a bit like Alanis Morrisette, to also get recognition for making great music. And obviously this one did that. So I just wondered whether you thought side 2, you know, was just part of her, or whether it was adding or subtracting from sort of side 1. That was all.
No, I don't. It
No.
certainly doesn't subtract from it.
Right.
As a body of work. No, not at all. You know,
No.
You're right. It's different, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, and she's bonkers, right?
And she's bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So you're a fan, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, big time.
Cool. John.
Yeah, not an artist I've listened a lot to outside the singles, so that's quite an interesting album actually. Running Up That Hill clearly got a bit of a new audience through Stranger Things, I think, didn't it?
Yep.
And I've listened to that quite a bit. I just find it so much better now than when it came out in 1985. You know, when I listened to that in 1985, sorry, I could take it or leave it. But I love the drum machine loop that's going on. It just powers the song, right? And I just pick up on that. I think it's, you know, again, I talked about previously about the opening track of an album. You know, it sets the scene, and I think Running Up That Hill absolutely does that. I think side 1, you know, you've got 5 songs, 4 singles, Hounds of Love, the synth, absolutely brilliant. And also all the videos of, you know, that accompany them as well, which, you know, in the middle of the 80s, you know, videos were becoming such a big thing to, you know, promote records, sell records and all of that kind of stuff. Again, you know, looking at influences, you know, who do we see nowadays? Self-Esteem, you know, probably one of the big breaking acts at the moment. I can totally see the influence there. Florence and the Machine as well be another one. Cloudbusting, loved that as well. Just a great song. I think the Big Sky, I think, is probably the most commercial song on it, for me. But then you get to side 2, which, you know, we talk about, and I think, you know, the first side is very commercial based. That's where all the singles were. Side 2 is really experimental. You're getting backward loops going on there. It's really mixed up. First song, The Sound and Dream of Sheep, it's just a piano and her voice. And her voice is actually, I look on it as an instrument in the same way as I would a guitar or, you know, keyboards. She's, you know, the voice is actually not just there to sing the words. It's actually a predominant part of the track. So it is the voice particularly is a star in that, you know, and I think there's some literary notes going on there, influences from poems, books, literature, all of that kind of stuff. Also, some of the musicians on it, I was kind of quite intrigued by. You know, you look those guys up and girls up. They play the bands, you know, particularly a lot of folk bands like Plankstay, Pentangle, the Dubliners, a lot of, you know, Irish folk, but there's also some choral music going on there as well. So she doesn't leave.
She's also got Stuart Elliott, who plays drums for her. His CV is outstanding. So he's he plays with Macca and Al Stewart. I know a bit of Stuart Elliott because I was a big Steve Harley fan. So back in the late 70s and early 80s, and Stuart Elliott played live with Steve Harley as well, and he raved about him. So I think she picked the right people, I think, to help her sound come to life and make it, I guess, make it sound the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And I think, you know, that mix of experimental and traditional is quite interesting. You know, that people say, you know, there's a bit of prog going on there. There clearly is. And I think, you know, Brothers on there as well. But also Youth, is it, plays bass on The Big Sky from Killing Joke.
I didn't know that.
You know, so he's in there as well. And some other guy as well, a guy called Michael Berkeley, who's now in the House of Lords.
Right.
So that was quite an interesting one as well. So, you know, I like it. I think it's quite an interesting conversation. You know, Stephen said he likes the side one to side two. They are completely different. But I just wonder if she thought, sorry, hold on. If she thought at the time about maybe doing two separate albums. One, you know, as we've seen certain bands throughout the years or artists, they'll do, right, that's a whole album of experimental stuff, and here's a whole album of something completely different. She chose to do that in one album. I think it works, but I could see quite a lot of people will play side one only. Or side two, you know, depending on the mood. I don't think it's an album that I think you have to be in a certain mood to potentially listen to the whole thing at once, or even one side at a time. It doesn't necessarily flow, and that's not a bad thing necessarily.
I think it does flow in terms of the themes that she establishes in the first side, although stylistically the second side is very different. The themes that she explores do continue right through, and that pulls it all together, even though it's a completely different sound.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I'm talking more musically than necessarily the narrative.
I know that when it was
I'm always talking the narrative, so that's why I say that. When
it was originally sort of composed, I think she took a couple of years to make it, and initially side one was to be a suite of songs. And side two was to be a different suite of songs, which it became the Ninth Wave. So I think in her head there was always going to be sort of two songs, if you want, on the album, side one, side two. They just had different styles to them. But I think the songs on side one individually became so strong on their own that you couldn't put them together as a suite, because they were just so powerful as 3-4 minute pop songs. So, but it's very interesting. And also when you go back and look at how she had sort of got to this point, she had quite a lot of power, obviously, because of the success she had before. But as I mentioned earlier, she hadn't had that much success in the previous 2 years, and it was a little bit, she was either going to break out of that and become commercially successful again, or not, and sort of remain a bit of a niche artist going forward. So, as you say, John, when she sort of hit that MTV thing, which was very uncomfortable for her, because as you probably know, when she did her first record, she toured that in '79, and then never toured again. She has never toured again. She's only ever done one set of shows at Hammersmith in 2014, and never played live in between or after, other than the odd kind of TV show and stuff like that. So I think she was making a concerted effort to make the album a success, and then maybe after that she chose to go back a little bit to doing what she wants to do, which is a lot of what you say, John, which is that more experimental stuff, and being quite unique in her own way, which I think is great about her. So
she played Running Up That Hill on a TV show, sang it. I'm not sure if it was live, I'm guessing not, but 1987, do you know what the show was?
I know where I saw it the first time. That's maybe a different question, because I never forget it. So the first time first time I saw it was on Wogan.
Correct. It wasn't Wogan.
It was Wogan, was it?
Terry Wogan show.
I vivid, you know how you have some vivid memories? I vividly remember sitting just whenever Tuesday night or something like that, and Wogan come on and sitting watching it, and he does his chatty chat stuff, and then he always had a singer, didn't he? Always someone on, and he said there's a new single by Kate Bush, and if you remember it, she had this thing where the band were all together, but nobody moved. They were like sort of statuettes, weren't they? They kind of all just stood together, and it was so anti MTV and stuff like that. I never forget watching it. It's amazing. God bless Wogan. Lisa, what's your take?
Right, so I'm at risk at like keeping you for about an hour. So I'll try and just keep it nice and brief because we've heard lots already about it. Yep, as you said, two distinct sides. And as I said to John, it's the themes for me that carry right through. So I'm always struck by the imagery and the juxtaposition of her voice.
Yep.
Sounds that she's put so much sort of exploratory stuff into that synthesizer that she uses to adapt her own voice, to bring in different sounds like, you know, voiceovers, crashing plates. It's just an incredible variety going on, you know. Our themes are very much, I don't know, it's all about the imagination, looking into your imagination, your unconscious. It's a pay into nature, hills, skies, sun, you know, clouds,
Yeah.
love,
Foxes.
Foxes.
Mm-hmm.
Love, relationships, not just of lovers, but of mother to child, of father to child, child to father, which are obviously dealt with a wee bit differently. But I think that the lyrics just bring so much to this as well. I don't know. I feel like her use of imagery is amazing. Like she's the fox. She doesn't want to fall. You know, she doesn't. She's scared of falling in love, but she's kind of craving it as well. So she's the fox to the love, which is the hound. You know, I just think it's all really quite kind of incredibly interesting. Running up that hill, what's she running from? It's not a hill, you know, she's not running up a hill, is she running from herself, or her own consciousness, her own sex, who knows. The second half, it's very much this kind of, it's like a piece of theatre, really, you know, like orally, it's, she goes through this process of being a sailor who's shipwrecked, and it goes through, you know, Dream of Sheep as he's sort of feels as if he's sinking, but I think he's just hypothermic or something like that. I don't know. And it goes through this process from that to the jig of life, etc. You've got all the influences of the Irish jig. You've got the Gregorian chants. It's just, there's so much in there. Where do you even start?
Is there too much?
Not for me.
No.
I have to say that when it came out in 1985, I was first year uni, and I just used to lie in my bed and listen to it, because I feel like the second half is actually like, you know these nightmares you have where you feel like you're being chased, but you're trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But you just can't get there. You can't get there, and you're slipping between consciousness and unconsciousness, and there's all this fear and all these weird things and different voices. I feel like it's just like one big kind of musical nightmare, but still enjoyable to listen to. And of course, the last song, which is my favourite and the shortest, The Morning Fog, is almost like it's like the last chord in a piece of music where it suddenly, because there's so much sort of in the minor keys that side, and this suddenly goes straight into this major key. It's her Tierce de Picardy, for you Philistines, you know.
All right.
Like
I knew that.
Of course you did. And it's like, you know, it goes straight to major key. It's like a sunrise. You know, she talks, and the light comes, this major key, and she just is bursting with love for everybody. And I think it's just a lovely end to the album. I could go on, but I'm not going to.
Please do. I guess where we get to with her is that is this her best album? I guess would be a question before we vote it in or out.
I think so. I think what came before, I think the second side is very much a wee dose of what we had before with the exploratory stuff and the experimentation. But I think I think possibly that, you know, the singles do help to make it that rounded, really great album.
Yeah, so it was number one in the UK. So it did get that recognition that we talked about. I think it knocked Madonna off number one. She was number one at the time, Like a Virgin. Big hit in America as well, which she'd always struggled to break through on. She when she did her live stuff, she revisited that. And interesting, you talk about side two, Lisa. When she did her 2014 shows, she actually played side two in totality, as a sort of as a suite, because she felt she'd never had the chance to do that really. And apparently it went down very well. One of my biggest regrets was I didn't get a ticket for that. She was the first female, I'm probably stealing John's thunder here, first female to have a number one in the UK with her own song.
Really?
Ever,
Wow.
ever. Wuthering Heights, yeah. First time ever. And I think she was the first female for an album to go straight into number one as well. So I think she you know, she's punched her weight big time as an individual here. It's quite interesting. It's a bit of a theme tonight coming out about people that have kind of became something and, you know, kept their own identity and then got achievement out of that rather than changing and being something else again. The other thing I was going to kind of mention was that she did go forward and do lots of other really interesting stuff, but as you see, Lisa, it became a lot more of the things I guess she maybe wanted to do, rather than maybe felt she had to do a little bit. And if you haven't heard, there's an album that she done called 50 Words for Snow, which is outstanding. It's
Oh, that one.
it's almost a kind of sort of call it a Christmas album for want of a better word, but only in sort of mood and stuff. It's all very kind of lo-fi and minimalistic and stuff like that. So she does sort of bounce around a lot, but she's still doing what she does, and no doubt will come back again at some point and kill us with another fantastic record. Twitter were 79% yes on this one, and a couple of comments around it were very positive. So yeah, before we sign this one off, any other comments, observations, John? Any snippets that we haven't had yet, mate?
Any other snippets? I don't think so. I just think that her voice is just the star. She's very theatrical, isn't she? You know,
Yeah.
it's not just music; it's performance. I think as well, and I think there's a lot goes into what she puts out there. You know, it's not just a case of coming up with lyrics and songs. It's more, you know, more beyond that. But I think some of the musicianship on it, you know, the cello and, you know, piano and all of that kind of stuff, and some of the songs are just, you know, really fantastic. I think she clearly at that point got a great bunch of musicians round about her,
Yeah.
which really make the record shine. As I say, I was never a Kate Bush fan, but I can 100% appreciate the beauty in this record.
Yeah, me
So
too, mate.
it's a big tick for me.
So we'll get around the room, and my only other PS to Lisa's comments about the sound and the instruments and stuff is that I remember reading a review of it at the time. I don't know who she was talking to, but she had a rule when she was writing the record that there was to be no cymbals on the record. So if you you know, stick it on and listen through it, there's no cymbals on the whole record. So although it's a very sort of drum and drum loop orientated record, there's actually a lot of space on the record as well, which is what she wanted. She didn't want the cymbals to be sort of crashing in. So I think she knows what she wants, and some of those small things I think.
The drumming though it's what drives.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah,
that's what drives it. Like John mentioned the drums earlier.
Wonderful.
Running up that hill, it starts. It's almost tribal. You know that those drums, incredible stuff.
Okay, so
I
John,
think it's
sorry, John.
Sorry, just come back to the lyrics as well. I think it's interesting that running up that hill is actually about the fact or not, but the difference between men and women, that they just don't understand each other, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, Lisa was alluding to a couple of things it might be about.
Yeah, it's a wee bit about equality, you know. It's the ones who love. It's about that equality thing, and at the end, her voice becomes that. I keep talking about this bloody synthesizer, but it brings her voice down So it's almost as if like technology allows her to become transgender. You know, you've got her voice, and then it brings the computerized voice brings it down, and it's that kind of like I said, you know, she was trying to escape something. Herself.
Yeah, what she's run a bit, what she run away from or run to, and
yeah, absolutely.
Herself, possibly, who knows? Her sex, who knows?
Absolutely. So, John, you're a yes, mate.
Absolutely,
yeah. Stephen,
it's a proper artist.
Proper artist. I'll take that as a yes. Lisa,
I'm a massive yes.
Massive yes. George was definitely in. Yes, and I've probably underplayed my love for Kate Bush on this one. I think she's amazing, and it's a big yes from me. So one of my favourite top 10 songs ever is a Kate Bush song, which isn't on this record actually. So maybe do top 10 Kate Bush songs ever podcast.
What is it?
Moments of Pleasure.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's not the one that makes me cry then.
Oh, murder. Yeah. Fantastic, absolutely brilliant.
So you've got 9 Rush singles and then 1 Kate Bush.
That might make me cry.
Listen, if we can put Kate Bush on with a prog rock side to suite of songs, Rush are getting closer and closer, John. My only PS to all of that was if you haven't saw it, there's a thing they do every year, which I think started in Australia, and I think there's all over the world now, where they have a most Wuthering Heights day ever thing. So I don't know if you remember the video where she's sort of running around the fields and she's got this big kind of floaty dresses and all the stuff that she was doing. So basically, one day a year they reenact that in all these different cities around the world now. There's a few things on YouTube and stuff. I think it was every year. I think obviously lockdown stopped it, but to best of my knowledge, they're back doing it again now. And it's just, you can imagine like 300 or 400 of them all dancing around the park somewhere in Melbourne or wherever. It's good fun. Definitely worth a watch.
I could get that started up in the Battery Park.
That probably is happening in the Battery Park, Lisa, as many other things are.
All that kind of pagan stuff, you know.
When is that in Australia?
I'll find it out, and I don't know. I will. I'll share it with everyone when I post it out there. It's really good. Really, are you thinking of going, John? Or
well, if it's in November, I might take part.
You have to put the dress on, right?
Of course, yeah.
It's a deal. We've got that on video, mate. So 67, so that's us 3 in so far. Wow, we're doing well. We'll see how we go on with this one. 67 is Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt. So our take on that from Rolling Stone was, stay with us, Stephen. Before there was Jay-Z, the mogul, the legend, the Beyonce boy toy, there was Jay-Z on his do or die hustle, trying just to get a seat at the table. Quote, forever petty minds stay petty, minds thinking longevity until I'm 70. Quote, he rhymes on the virtuosic 22s. His earliest experiment in toying with standard rap structures. When he raps about drug dealing and not trusting women, the details are specific and self-aware. Jay's charisma and comic intuitions are evident even on small touches like his taunting laugh in the chorus of Ain't No Nigga, a gloriously funky track that lit up dance clubs. Here he planted a flag in the underground. Within 2 years, the pop hits followed and the hustle went worldwide. Number 67, Jay-Z, Reasonable's Out, released June 1996. Who's going first with Jay-Z?
Can I go first?
Of course you can.
Is that okay, guys?
Oh, yours.
Only because I'm going to be really brief.
Cool.
I did try and listen to it. It's not going to be another Drake moment, but I found it really bland, and I don't know what I'm missing. There's just something in me that found it really, really bland. And if he's got something really important to say, then the music just didn't hook me enough for me to want to listen. And I'm afraid I gave up.
Okay.
I told you.
It's very brief, yeah. So, okay. So no redeeming features at all for you in the record, no?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't manage to finish it, and I feel as if I should have made myself, because I normally do.
Yeah.
But
that's okay.
When you're pushed for time, you tend to listen more to the ones that you actually really feel quite passionately about and have something to say about, have an opinion about, and I just didn't have one on this. You you know, I think he's good at what he does. I think he's good at producing his rather talented wife, but no, it just didn't do it for me.
So he's done 13 albums. This was his debut album from '96, I think, as I said, and his last record, I think, was in 2017. So he's not had one out for a while, but in between times, he was, you know, he was fairly prolific, and obviously became bigger and bigger. He has one other album in the top 100 that we're still to come to. Okay, just to give you a bit of context on that one.
I know you're all going to put me to shame now, but I'm sorry.
No, not at all. No, absolutely. It's good to get a concise summary of it all. Stephen, John.
Have you swapped for the red to the white there?
No, do you know what? I had a wee beer waiting there.
No.
I didn't want to have 2 glasses of red, but I had a wee beer in the wings.
Stephen, we're missing out tonight, mate.
I was actually wondering if anyone would notice.
Next week,
definitely.
For my next trick.
Stephen, John, what's your take on Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt?
Well, I'll go. First up, I'm surprised it's as old as 1996. 27 years old. That's our Megan was born in 1996.
Absolutely. He's been around a while.
So at that time, I wasn't paying much attention to music. So I didn't have a minute, as you know.
Yeah.
But this guy's not my cup of tea, I'm afraid. You know, I've gave it a whirl. But no, I'm going to be like Lisa here and knock this one on the head quite quickly. And if you're asking me, is it one of the top 100 albums ever made? I'd say categorically no.
And is that because of the genre,
no,
Stephen? Because we've had this chat before, haven't we?
I said earlier on. I love the
NWA.
Album.
Yeah,
right. I do dip in and out of rap now and again. Right. I like some of it, but this one left me cold.
Okay,
really left me quite cold indeed.
It's definitely got to do with genre because I mean, look at we all of us were new to Frank Ocean, I think, and a genre that I'm just not familiar with, and we voted it in.
Sure, Miss Elliott, we voted in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just curious. So
it's about you know, if music is really good, it should be able to like give you goosebumps and put your hair on end. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, this guy's hard to contextualize it now because this guy, you know, came from nothing, I guess, as they all do. But you know, he had a pretty tough upbringing, and you know, family life was tough, and you know, people around him, but people left him as well all the time. He got into a lot of trouble. I think he shot his brother, didn't he, when he was 12 or something by accident, and then again had to deal with that. He was selling tapes out the back of a car before he made this record, to try and get his name out there. So, you know, whatever you see of him now, and I understand now he's this kind of iconic billionaire, but at the time he was just a boy trying to make good. So it's interesting to hear your take on that. John, what's your take on it, mate?
Okay, well, Stephen and Lisa started off in a negative on this guy, right? On this album. I'll start off in a positive just to flip it around a bit. The song Brooklyn's Finest with Notorious B.I.G. I think is a genuinely strong track. I really, really like it. So I have a couple of songs, Devils and Coming of Age, pretty decent. But let's stop there because the rest of it is mush, right?
I thought I was just warming up there, John. I was quite interested there.
Yeah. Okay.
The defence did not last long.
No, it did not.
It's classified as mafiosa rap.
It is,
what the fuck is that? What's it? Genuine question.
What it is.
Genuine question. What is the difference between mafioso rap and gangster rap?
It sounds posher.
Gangster rap came from the West Coast, and mafioso rap is from New York or New Jersey.
Okay.
I think.
Right. So I think it's a bit wet. It's a bit of a letdown.
Bland.
Bland, yes, 100%. It's soul with no soul. It's soulless. It's all fur coat and no knickers. It's like dining in the fucking Ivy and going for a cocktail in the House of Gods. It's hyped up. It's hype for hype's sake by morons who know what they know. They know fucking now, right? It's monotonous. It's bland. It's pish. Get it to fuck.
I concur, as somebody who was dragged by some friends to the Ivy only yesterday, that the food was mediocre, and I don't know how they get away with it.
Who paid, Lisa?
Well,
Jay-Z makes the Ivy. There you go.
Well, we can review the Ivy as well if you want. I don't mind.
We will get sued, Brian.
Yeah, we'll get any freebies, will we? Put it that way.
I played a few cocktails, so I kind of forgot about the food.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. I'll add to that a little bit, and then maybe try and come back round. And if that's just a quick review, it's a quick review. I'm picking up on what you have said there, and it reminded me of. Do you remember the Noel Gallagher quote when he was headlining Glastonbury, which Gallagher subsequently retracted? I might add, but at the time, it was announced Jay-Z was headlining Glastonbury, and it obviously was a sellout, and Noel Gallagher said that it shouldn't be happening. He said, "I'm sorry, but Jay-Z, ? No chance. Glastonbury has a tradition of kind of guitar music, do you know what I mean? And even when they throw the odd curveball in their Sunday night, you go like Kylie Minogue, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not having hip hop at Glastonbury. No way. No. It's wrong." And if I remember,
wonderful knowledge, isn't he, that Noel Gallagher?
well, I'm not backing Noel per se. I'm just saying that, you know, Jay-Z has always created that kind of controversy, and I think from memory, did he not open his set with Wonderwall, Jay-Z, when he came on at Glastonbury?
That before or after what Noel said?
After. Yeah,
Well,
and repost.
I like that.
You know.
That's a bit of attitude.
So I think, you know, I am not a big fan of Jay-Z, and I wouldn't for the life of me be arguing you should have 2 albums in the top 100, and as I say, we've got another one to review. I do think there's something about him. I don't think you can be that lucky all of the time and be as successful as he is. I think this record probably isn't strong enough for me to argue against what you're saying. I think there are some good tracks in it. I would concur with John. I actually think there's 3 or 4 singles off the record that are actually pretty good. I think Mary J. Blige, she's on one as well, and I hear that. I like it. You know, it's good music. I think it feels of its time, and I think it feels like somebody who, different to say NWA, that was just a statement, wasn't it? That was boomf. This one feels as if, you know, a guy's been lucky enough to make a record, and then from there he's kicked on and started to do what he wanted to do. And as I say, we'll maybe revisit that one. I did pick up, he's now, what's got the things picked up, talking about keeping it real. So he's now living in an $88 million home under Mafioso rap.
What do we know? What do we know?
Yeah, and he was the first hip hop billionaire. Maybe the last, I don't know. And also one other call out, I guess, just for us to think about Blueprint, which is the other one that's going to be reviewed. But he also supported U2 on tour. You know, and again, I can only imagine how that would have went down with a U2 audience, you know, going around the world and stuff. And his view was that it's what he wanted to do, and obviously through U2 they were happy to give him that opportunity to do that. So I think in his own way he actually has all this attitude and stuff that we've talked about with some of the other artists, but whether that's transferred into great music, I guess is a bit of a moot point at the moment. So so 55 minutes, 14 tracks, Twitter 86% no. So that was probably John voting multiple times, I would have thought. So let me just double check then. Stephen?
No.
Lisa?
God, no.
God, no. John?
Hell no.
Hell no. And
No.
I'm a no on this one, but I am a considered no. I think there's a bit more in this than maybe you guys are calling out, but I do recognise it. It's not 100
Possibly,
greatest
but
album.
it's not top 100.
No, I would agree with that, absolutely. I don't think it's a 100 album.
I mean, I completely disagree with you taking the Mary J. Blige song. That's, again, I come back to the point, you've got to start an album with a cracking song, right? Can't knock the hustle. I just thought, you know, if that song's a colour, it's beige, right? It is completely beige. Mary J, beige,
I like
singing
beige.
on it,
I
right?
like beige.
Yeah. If he was playing in my back garden, I'd shut the curtains, quite frankly, right? But I do take the point around playing with different genres or different styles of music. So he supported U2. The Clash did that with the likes of Bo Diddley, Grandmaster Flash. I think it's a great way to get out there and see bands that ordinarily, wouldn't be on the same bill as somebody. And I think it also takes a lot of balls to actually put somebody on like that on your bill, because quite frankly, the band are, no one turns up, or very few people turn up to see the support band. When they come on, they're a completely different musical genre, makes it even harder. So I think to give a little bit of balance, fair play on that.
Yeah, well, George was a no as well. So again, we're clean sweep no the other way there, and that's the first one we've not back. And it mentioned that U2 thing there. It did remind me of the time I went to my mate's a huge Queen fan, as Stephen knows, and they drive me to see Queen in sort of mid-80s up in Edinburgh, and the band supporting Queen were Teardrop Explodes, who I was a big fan of. Did not go down well with with the core Queen audience, as you can imagine. And Julian Cope just milked it to death, really. And I don't know if you remember, I used to sing on this kind of like a pogo stick microphone thing. I don't know if you remember that. Just to stand up on it. Yeah. Anyway, he was on that, and somebody hit him with a bottle on the head as he was singing a song, and ended up falling off, and the whole thing got shut early and stuff. But Queen were massively critical of the crowd after that, massively critical, because of course they argued that their awareness of music was quite broad, albeit a lot of it came out as the sort of same way, but they liked a lot of different things. So there you are. So 66 to finish tonight. So we're going back a bit to 1965. So 66 is John Coltrane, A Love Supreme. So we've got some success with jazz so far. So
guys, I'm going to bow out for 1 minute.
No bother, mate. We'll see how this one goes. So the summary
I'm the last one with the jazz in it.
Yeah, well, John didn't. So in late 64, John Coltrane secluded himself in a spare upstairs bedroom in his house, Long Island, with his saxophone, pen and paper. His wife Alice later remembers him emerging like Moses coming down from the mountain with a brand new album-length suite of devotional music, which he called A Love Supreme. This album is a humble offering to him, he would write in the liner notes of an LP, an attempt to say, thank you God, through our work, even as we do in our hearts and with our tongues. The resulting album's 4 movements, from part 1 Acknowledgement with its mantra-like chant of the title phrase, to part 2 Resolution, driven by the thunderous swing of drummer Elvin Jones, perfectly encapsulates the way the saxophonist's mature work blended with prayerful reflection about explosive catharsis. So that's us to finish tonight. John Coltrane. It was released in January 1965, and it's number 66 in the list. So, John, take us away, because I every time I think of jazz, I think of you. So tell me about
because of your jazz hands.
Jazz hands, yeah.
Yeah. Indeed, yeah. So, look, jazz. We talked a few weeks ago about, who's it? Miles, somebody, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bitches Brew.
Miles Davis.
That's
Miles
right.
Davis. Yeah. And I think I used the phrase, I would rather put rusty nails through my eyeballs and listen to that album again. And that album, I recall, was released on the day I was born, so I was so hoping I would love it.
Yeah.
John Coltrane. I don't think I'll get to the point that I'll be putting rusty nails through my eyeballs. I didn't mind it. 4 songs, 32 minutes, right? Free jazz, avant-garde jazz, all that kind of stuff, right? Now, I've read quite a bit around music and what Miles Davis meant, what John Coltrane meant, Thelonious Monk, Ornette Coleman, all these guys, right? So I've read about these guys, and I know the influence they've made in music. love reading about it, listening to it, not so much. So the four songs in offer, right? The actual first song, I think, so it's Parts, isn't it? I think the first one's called Acknowledgement.
Yep.
So Coltrane's playing the sax, and I really loved the sax. I thought, really get it, really great. The drums, pretty good, but the piano, Jesus, that was just a pure distraction for me. It was a plinky plonk, and it was just irritating me, right, throughout. I struggled with it. Look, if I'm going to be fair about stuff and say, right, should there be a jazz album, the top 100? Would this be it? Possibly. When I saw it was 32 minutes, I'm kind of thinking, well, is that really an album? 4 songs? It seems like a
EP.
Yeah,
but 32 minutes is great, isn't it? We love albums. Stooges is 34 minutes or something.
But you've not got 4 songs in that. You're getting different shit going on, right?
Yeah, but but think of the amount of notes you're getting on this album. You get millions of them.
Yeah, but a lot of it's just the same note played over and over.
Love Supreme.
So yeah,
did you like it, John?
I will never listen to it again.
Right. So are you saying that you appreciate what they're doing, you understand its importance in relative terms to modern music and the influence it has on artists and all the other things that you read about, but when you actually put it on, you're struggling to make that work for you?
I buy into the history of it.
Right.
I get the influence. I mean, the fact is, it influenced bands like U2 that we talked about earlier, it influenced bands like the Byrds, who I love.
Pink Floyd.
Pink
Floyd influence on Dark Side of the Moon.
So I get the influence, and therefore, should that be in the top 100 albums, I can see the pull for that, and I can see the pull for, I would want a broad set of genres on this, because we talked about listening to different bands or artists that we wouldn't normally like and opining on it. So this absolutely falls into that category. Would I listen to it again? Very unlikely. And I will leave it there for the moment. It's quite interesting though, reading about the album as much as it is 99% instrumental, right?
Yep.
But we talk about scholars interpret this as paying a homage to sermons by preachers. Right, okay, so where did they get that from? But, when it's instrumental music, it's quite an interesting concept. So, which I've not actually read up on to get. It's not like you can interpret lyrics and all that kind of stuff. It's just music. So, so that's a bit of a hidden area which I've not looked into. But so I'll leave it there for the moment. But yeah.
So this was his 18th album. He only did a couple more after it because he passed fairly early age in 67, and he'd served his time, big time actually, through sort of post-war and into the 50s with some of the guys that John mentioned here. So wasn't a guy. This isn't somebody who popped out and had a jazz album and everybody went, "Oh, this guy's amazing." He'd absolutely played with most of the greats until he ended up sort of doing his own thing. But this was very different for him. I think if you listen to any of his stuff, I know if George was on, he would talk about this where, for example, he plays on A Kind of Blue with Miles Davis, which I think we get to further down the list. So he's one of the key players on that. And that's, for me, much more like a jazz album would be. It's got a bit more structure to it, and it's got a sort of slightly different pace to it. And of course, there are other instruments in there because Miles Davis is on there and what have you. So very much time served. And this kind of came out of nowhere at the time, really. It wasn't particularly big. And the other thing about it ended up sort of being platinum, which was just unheard of for jazz albums at the time. You know, they sold what 30, 40, 50,000 copies. This by 70, I think, it sold 1 million copies. So, you know, it definitely earned its chops in that way. But we'll touch on anything else comes off the back of that. Lisa, Stephen, what's your take?
Lisa, Stephen, Lisa or Stephen?
Lisa.
I'll go.
Lisa.
I'll go.
Stephen.
Whatever.
Hi, Spartacus.
I'm a I'm a bit of a musical philistine when it comes to jazz.
Okay.
Personally, it's always left me pretty cold. I hear what John's saying about how he was, and yourself, his legacy is fantastic in that genre and other genres that he touches. But for me personally, I listened to it this morning. Like John, I don't think I'd go back to it. You know, I don't think it's my scene at all.
And do you think, I mean, obviously, most things with repeated listens, if they're good, get better. Do you think it's something that has depth to it? So John's saying, you know, there's a bit of a story in there that is quite hard to tease out because there's no lyrics or anything on it. So do you think there is a mood in there that you could get into if you
I've tried, and if this was on in the car, I'd be popping the CD.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
It's simply not for me. I'm sure there's a bazillion aficionados out there would string me up by the ankles, you know, call me a heretic. But
George Patterson would be one of them, I might add.
Well, he's going to have to catch me first.
So George's comments were that this is 100% in for George, and he's obviously not here to fight his corner. But if you remember, that's a square goal. If you remember, he was a fan of Miles Davis, but not Bitches Brew, I think was his take on it, and he thinks Coltrane's Love Supreme should absolutely be in there. But that's okay. He gets one vote like everyone else.
Well, it's opinion, of course. He knows a hell of a lot more about it than I do, but
it was recorded in one day. In fact, it's recorded in one session, the whole album. Which again, I suppose you might say, well, why wouldn't it be? Because it's just 4 songs and they knock it out. But again, as I understand it, that was very unusual at the time. I think they used to record and re-record, and because they'd done a second session the next day with the same songs, and when they reviewed the 2 sets, the 2 recordings, they stuck with the first recording, so they just put the first one out as it was.
The guy was a pioneer.
Yeah, clever cookie, I think.
Of course he was, but I don't know if it's passage of time or whatever, but no, it's not for me, mate.
Okay, all right, Lisa.
What can I say?
Love it.
Nice.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah.
Nice. That was very good. Very good.
I bet you didn't think I had a Cohiba to hand, eh?
No, I did not. The things we learn.
The things you find in your dining room when you need a prop.
So Cohiba in hand and Love Supreme, is that your perfect night?
Really wouldn't touch that. Pathetic efforts at being funny. Like Stephen said, I'm really not an aficionado of jazz at all. And I don't think I was on the Bitches Brew one, but I had listened to it, and I just couldn't. It was just noise, and it was actually kind of scrambling my brain. You know, it was going in so many directions. I get what you were saying, John, about the sermon thing, because I think this was supposed to be his kind of spiritual awakening, wasn't it? Because he had been drinking.
Yeah, he was a heroin addict and womanizer and stuff like that. He had a bit of a backstory, yeah.
And he'd always been a musician, but very much like a journeyman, hadn't really made it anywhere. And it was almost as if he had this kind of epiphany, and this was his, as I said, spiritual awakening. So this kind of, it's funny how we've got 2 albums with a single suite. You know, this is obviously a whole album. But this 4-parter, Acknowledgement, Resolution, Pursuance, and Psalm, is his reference to obviously what he's heard in sermons and preachers. and I suppose it refers to this idea of supreme love, and I think that he clearly believes that this has been his deliverance, and this is his way of saying how grateful he is, his praise for this kind of, you know, superior being. And I think he probably believes as well that the artist's talent is God-given, you know, from that supreme love. Having said that, doesn't make, I tried to look into it a wee bit. I really don't know much about jazz, but I found that when I tried to think about it in those terms, I found it a wee bit easier to listen to. It didn't really make that much sense to me, but it just helped me to just stick with it, go through it, and I kind of got it. That first part, I love Supreme, and it's based on that kind of very, you sang it earlier, that four note bass line, and then he kind of chants it, I love Supreme, and it kind of goes on and on and on and on, and clearly that's what the whole thing's about. And other than that, what I really liked it. In the end, I've played it quite a few times. I feel that I'm not astute enough to be particularly constructive in my criticism, but I did eventually quite enjoy listening to it, and I definitely would revisit it.
Yeah, me too. I've tried really hard with this one. I'm uncomfortable with jazz as well, and I've listened to this one more than I think any album I think so far that we've listened to. Because guys like George who know their stuff as well, and you know, rave about it, and of course they could be wrong, but you know, I do take on board what other people think about things, and I think
being wrong though, it's subjective. So
I understand that, but to be so far out with it, you know, I'm thinking, well, there's got to be something in there, and I did every time I listened to it. Definitely got better every time. There's more and more stuff in there. I still don't think it's the kind of, for me, it's not the perfect record that people talk about it being. I think there's too much noodling in it for me. I'm not big on, even with guys.
What's noodling?
Noodling, you know, just too much. As John said earlier on about the piano sort of sound as if there's a cat running up and down it and stuff like that. You know, it's like everybody in it at the same time, and then repeatedly, that, you know, going back and doing the same thing over and over again. Which I understand there's a skill to it, but as a listener, I didn't particularly enjoy it.
The untrained ear, there's just too much fucking about going on.
Well, I loved the bits where there was kind of a bit of individualism in there, you know, where there was a bit of space for the bass or the drummers, or the drummers are absolutely kicking, by the way. Elvin Jones, right? I thought he was outstanding throughout, absolutely having a go. But interestingly, he left the band just after this because he didn't think where John Coltrane was going was somewhere where he wanted to be as a jazz drummer. So he definitely was polarizing, not just the kind of audiences, but even the guys that he played with. It was a bit of a sort of polarizing album, which I guess a lot of the great albums have been. I genuinely got to love it. There's a couple of reviews I picked up on, which I guess summarise that quite nicely. So, guy from The Guardian, this is from August '65. His headline was that it was an exercise in musical monotony. And this was a jazz fan. So he gave it a bit of a hard time. And then another guy, Tom Hill, for Rolling Stone, said it was, quote, the most perfectly plotted single piece of jazz ever recorded, unquote. So back to being subjective. That's two guys who I guess know about jazz, I guess, sharing their thoughts on it. So anything else we would want to share about it before we take a vote? John, do you want to come back in?
John, did you not have the double bass?
Yeah, that was okay. At times, but yeah, I just think the piano in the first part of it just really pissed me off, and that kind of jazz stuff, they just tend to go off in one. You kind of think, what's the point, right? And yeah, look, people have got views, right, and I appreciate that. We're all on here talking, and it is subjective, as it has been said, and you know, people do have musical tastes and real knowledge. That doesn't make it right. If you know, it's up to you what you think as a listener, if it's good, bad, or indifferent. So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
I think though it's interesting. You did mention that there's another Miles Davis one coming up, so I may reserve my opinion on jazz for that. But you also look at records that have come out in the last 20, 30 years that are influenced by some of that stuff, right? So I'll give you one example, right? Portishead. There's a lot of jazz influences going on there, right? Hip hop and stuff like that. So I look at that as a more modern take, and absolutely love that band. So
And should be in the top 100.
It will be.
It will be. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I'm not just ignoring jazz and going, look, I don't get it and stuff like that. But stuff like that is really early roots stuff, and it's no for me.
Okay.
At this moment.
Let's go around the room. Well, before we get around the room, I was just going to share with Stephen as well that your favourite man's a big fan of this record, Mr. Weller.
Is he?
Huge fan. Yeah, it's on his top 10, top 15 albums ever list.
I'll have to speak to him.
He's also wrote a couple of songs based on it as well, on his albums. So I think, we are getting very close to home. John's right that, this might not be the record for us that we love, but I think there's things that have came from it that without it, I guess we probably wouldn't have got them, which I guess is another interesting take on it as well. Okay, so I'll start with George because it would kill me if I didn't. So George's quote was he was 100% in for this record. So Lisa.
God, this is so hard because I really don't feel as if as a listener I'm accomplished enough to make a decision, but I'm going to vote it in.
That's a yes from Lisa.
Stephen.
No.
It's a no from Stephen. John.
Look, I take my hat off to George, but he's not always right, and he's clearly not right in this one, right? I do flip between should I get this in or not, right? But I'll come back to the point around the other album we talked about, which is allegedly fantastic. So on that basis,
the next jazz one that's coming up.
Yeah. On that basis, I'm out.
Right.
or this album's out.
Okay, so a casting vote for me would be on balance. It's a no, because I do think that there's a better one coming up, and I also think that on its own merits, I don't think it is a top 100 album. Albeit other people, fundamentally disagree with that. But it's our podcast, so we get to vote on it. And also, I scribbled down if I was going to stick an instrumental album on, I would probably put Tubular Bells on.
I was about to say Tubular
by
Bells.
Mike Oldfield, which was groundbreaking in its own way, and did lots of things, no doubt, after having listened to lots of jazz and various other things over the years. There is a great, not this isn't a good album, but there's a great John Coltrane album called Ballads from I think maybe a couple of years before that, 62, 63, which is fantastic, and it's everything you would imagine it to be. It's very sort of soulful and stuff like that. So the guy's a clever guy, but he does play on Kind of Blue, and I'm declaring I'm probably going to get into bat for that one. So we'll see that one down the road a little bit. But that's a no tonight. Cast and vote no. So, which I think gives us 3 yeses and 2 no's. So let me just double check that. So NW was a yes, Alanis was a yes, Kate was a yes, and then Jay-Z was a no, and Coltrane was a no. Okay, cool.
I think the other thing, Brian,
sure,
to mention is if George is 100% yes, he does have an overrule.
It does have an overrule. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
You should bring that out as well.
We'll have to revisit that then. What we'll do for posterity is we'll start the next podcast with a sense check on that and see if George wants to use his veto. Okay, that's a really good point. Thank you. And remember, we all have one. So
yeah,
great shout, mate.
But on that point, if he brings it back in, can I veto his veto?
We could be here for a while, right?
Yeah.
So that was 3 in out of 5. That's now 20 out of 30, 35 that were voted in. So, well, we've found 20. We've got 80 to find, guys. So we're still going to plough through. Next 5 for the next podcast is James Brown, Live at the Apollo. One for John. Outcast, Stankonia. Steely Dan, Aja. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. And Eric B. and Rakim. What's the song, Lisa?
Paid in Full.
Paid in Full. Okay, so we'll be on with those ones soon. And hopefully we'll have George back for that one to have his veto decision as well. What's that?
Your soul as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. All righty. So any more for any more? Will we call it a night? Cool.
No,
Brilliant.
next edition.
Next time we all get together, which hopefully will be next week. But we'll do a double check on that one, make sure we're all available. Okay.
Okay.
Guys, that's quite a long one tonight, but lots of really interesting chat. You're more like Groucho Marx there, Lisa. Well, nothing wrong with a bit of Groucho, right? So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time, and until next time, stay safe, everyone, and we'll catch you all soon. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See you now.